Hey guys, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. So today I have another wrap up for you, so I will be doing some mini reviews of all of the books that I've read recently, and I think it is about 7 books. So I will talk about them from my least favorite to my most favorite. Okay, so recently I have to be honest with you, I have been in a bit of a reading slump and it has been really difficult to just read. I just haven't been motivated enough to read. I have the same books on my nightstand that have been there for over a month now, and I've barely made any progress into reading them. So a lot of these books that I'm talking about today are books that I read quite a while ago, when I wasn't in a reading slump, but hopefully I think I'm on my way out of that reading slump, hopefully. A lot of you guys seem to think that I read so much, but actually I don't read that much compared to other booktubers, and I sometimes get into reading slumps, and I think that is quite common, but yeah, just to let you guys know, I haven't been reading that much for the past month or so, but in any case, hopefully I'll get back to it soon and have more books to talk about in the future, but for now, here are the 7 books that I read recently. So, starting with my least favorite, and that is a Kindle book, and that is Wanderlust. Wanderlust by Jen Maloney, something like that, and I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. So this is a contemporary YA novel about a trip across Europe, and that is a subject that I'm always super excited about. Because it's something that I love writing and I don't see it very often. You know, there's a lot of American road trips and things like that, but there's not a lot of books set in Europe. I live in Europe, I love Europe, and I love travel books. But yeah, suffice to say, I wasn't super impressed with this one. So the plot of this book is that there's 2 sisters, and one of them is supposed to be a guide tour on this trip around Europe, but she gets into some sort of trouble with the police and she's not allowed to leave the city for a while, but she really needs this guide trip to go well, because then she can go to college or get better credits to go to a law college or something like that. I've read this a while ago, I can't remember exactly. But then her sister proposes that she goes in her stead, pretending to be her sister, and so that her sister can still get this credit for being a guide tour. And so that's what she does, and her sister, the one who's supposed to be the guide tour, gives her a big file of all of the travel locations and all of the itinerary, the details about who's participating on this tour, and everything. And so her sister starts going to Europe on a plane, and then I don't remember exactly how, but she loses that file. Just when she gets off the plane in Europe, she loses the file, and she has no idea about where she's going. She doesn't know any details, any history about the places she's going. So that's the basic plot of this book, and there's a lot of mischief and a lot of trouble that she gets into. It has I think it had a good skeleton of a story, but I feel like it just didn't have enough meat, if that makes any sense. I felt it was very superficial, and also the parts that were shown in the actual chapters where they were in the cities themselves, I felt like were very stereotypical. The author could have shown a few more interesting things of those cultures and those cities than what she did show. And it was very brief for every single city. They didn't stay for a long time in it, and the things that happened while they were there really didn't have anything to do with the city. And yeah, I felt like I wanted a bit more of the actual travel, and less of the day-to-day sort of tidbits of activity that honestly weren't very interesting. So yeah, all in all, 2 out of 5 stars. Not terrible, but definitely not my favorite. Okay, moving on to the next book. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars, and it is a classic, and it is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Now, I have actually read this once before. When I was very young, I read it in Romanian, and I remember that I really enjoyed it back then. And the reason why I bought it recently, I really wanted to reread it and see what I think of it now. It's one of these classics that it's kind of divisive, and some people really like it and some people really, really hate it. And I just wanted to get a fresh perspective on it and basically see what I think. And yeah, it was a very interesting read. Nothing happened is my main complaint. This book has no plot and the character is insufferable. For some reason, I remember when I had read it the first time, years and years ago, I knew that the character was supposed to be annoying, and for some reason I didn't find him that annoying when I read it, possibly because I myself was an annoying teenager back then and I related to Colden more. I have no problem with characters being intentionally flawed and intentionally insufferable, but for some reason, this time around, I think it's just the way he talks. And the fact that he literally swears every other sentence. And I don't mind swearing, but I think this just took it to a whole new level. Like, he just talked, he used swearing as a punctuation mark. And actually, I just remembered, you know what? It wasn't just the swearing, it was the fact that almost every other word had an emphasis on it. So when you write certain words in italics because they're meant to be emphasized when reading, literally, like, I'll try to find a sentence for you because it's so irritating because I cannot not hear that emphasis in my head while I'm reading it, and it's just in the most random and bizarre places that there shouldn't be an emphasis on these words, and yet every other sentence there is an emphasis. I'll just read you a little bit. It's just something I found randomly. It's probably not the best example, but I can't be bothered to sift through the whole book, so I'll just read you a little bit. I wouldn't have read it out loud to him if he'd written it. I really wouldn't. In the first place, I'd only written that damn note so that he wouldn't feel too bad about flunking me. You see, that is like him, he'd written. It's like, why are you emphasizing those words? It reads really clunkily because I can't help but emphasize it in my head, and I'm just wondering why. It was an interesting and eye-opening look at a character in the 1950s America, but there's a lot of stuff that just irritated me, and yeah, it wasn't an enjoyable reading experience. The next book is actually a novella, and it's called Witches of Lichford by Paul Cornell. And it's the first in a series of novellas, but I have only read this first one. This was a very strange book as well. I had initially bought it because I really wanted to read it around Halloween time, because, witches, and I thought it would be a nice little novella to read around time, but I never got around to reading it then, so I read it in the spring. It definitely has those creepy vibes. So it's basically about these 3 witches in this small town in America. There's a lot of uproar in this town because a big supermarket wants to move in and build, a supermarket on the premises, and obviously that's always, the small family establishments will then probably run out of business and things like that. But the bigger problem is that the land that the supermarket intends to be built upon is actually a sort of barrier between the real world and the supernatural world. And one of these witches knows about this, and she's trying to stop the supermarket from being built because it would destroy this barrier, and then all of the bad things will start coming into the real world and things like that. So the premise of it is really cool, but I just felt like the execution was a bit strange. I like the characters. I like the 3 witches, actually. I think their banter was actually really funny because they're all like these old witches that have known each other forever, and there's a lot of banter between them, so that was really nice. But as a whole, I just felt like, I don't know, I guess I wanted a bit more. I always have this issue with novellas because sometimes I feel like there should have been more, but of course it's a novella, and so should I be too harsh on it? There's not a lot of space there, so I'm not sure. But I gave this 3 out of 5. It was okay, not the best, but I definitely will probably continue on reading the other novellas in the series in the future. The next book is a contemporary novel, and that is Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins. So this is the companion novel to Anna and the French Kiss. There are 3 books in this companion series, and this is the second one. I'd read Anna and the French Kiss a couple of years ago, and I finally got around to reading the sequel. It's kind of a sequel. I mean, the characters from the first book appear in this one, but they're not the main characters. So it follows a completely different story, but it does include some characters from the first book. And I assume it's the same going into the third book. Okay, so I genuinely enjoyed this a lot more than Anna and the French Kiss. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It's about this girl called Lola who is really into fashion, and she always loves to dress up in these sort of wacky costumes. You know, she puts on wigs and big jewelry and crazy colors, and obviously, you know, she's considered to be a little bit of an eccentric, but it's just what makes her really happy to just play around with fashion. And she lives in San Francisco with her 2 dads, and their neighbors used to be this family called Bell that had 2 twins, a boy and a girl, but they had moved somewhere else at some point. But when the book starts, the Bell twins had moved back, and Lola really does not like this because she used to have a bit of a crush on the Bell twin boy, and yeah, she just doesn't want to deal with all of that over again, and she's a bit embarrassed about the things that sort of happened between them in the past, and you know, she was very content to not have him there anymore. But he comes back, and this boy is named Cricket. Very strange name for a boy, but there you go. And Cricket is also a really sweet and interesting character. And Cricket really likes to build things. And he used to build all sorts of like crazy contraptions when they were young. And oh, the thing is, their houses are really close together. And so when they were younger, they used to just talk to each other through the windows. So, you know, you can imagine that a budding romance starts up again between the two, and honestly, it was really cute. I was rooting for them, and I honestly really enjoyed this romance much more than the Anna and the French Kiss one. And like I said, the characters from Anna and the French Kiss appear in this book as well, and I like their romance more now than I did in the first book. That first book had some issues, but yeah, this one I really enjoyed much more than the first book, so I would highly recommend if you are into sweet contemporary romance. Thought this was very good. Okay, the next book is also a YA contemporary, and that is Queens of Geek by Jen Wild. This is an awesome exploration of geek culture. I'll just say that. So it's a story about 3 friends. One of them is a famous YouTuber, and there's this convention going on in America. I forgot exactly which city. So it's a sort of Comic-Con-like convention, where, yeah, one of the main characters is supposed to be a speaker, and she has a panel there and things like that, a lot of fans that are waiting to meet her, and she brings along her 2 best friends who are huge geeks, you know, who are just very excited to be surrounded by geek culture and seeing some of their favorite celebrities and just basking in the geekdom. Geekdom, you know what I mean. There's a lot of great representation in this book. It's an LGBTQ story, and one of the main characters has severe anxiety, and they are all Australian, so they fly over from Australia to America, and this girl who has really bad anxiety, you know, everything she does on this trip is new and stepping out of her comfort zone, and that triggers a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, and it's also, you know, showing how she sort of has to deal with all of that. So it's really good representation for anxiety. As someone who suffers from anxiety, I like seeing that kind of stuff in books because it's nice to build awareness that it's a real thing, and it sucks. But it's a very quick book to read, and I would highly recommend it if, you know, you like that sort of thing, if you like pop culture, and if you want to read a nice book with good representation. I think this is very nice. Okay, now we're getting into my favorite books that I've read recently, and the second to last one is Give the Dark My Love by Beth Revis. This was surprisingly gruesome and creepy and awesome. I didn't really know what to expect from it, but I love this. This was so good. So this is about a girl who comes from a poor background, who moves to a different district in her country to go to this famous magical academy to study medicinal alchemy. That is the only thing that she ever wants to do, is to be a medicinal alchemist. And she through a grant, she gets to go to this very prestigious school and learn that art. But now this is a fantasy world, obviously, and it is a very strange world. It is a very strange world, and it is currently pretty much under an attack of the plague, basically. There is a plague that's slowly taking over the lands, and the sort of the wealthy people of this land, they just think, oh, it's just a sickness of the poor and it's never gonna get to them, and they don't believe it's a real thing. The main character, Nedra, she knows that it is actually a real illness. One of the reasons why she wants to go to this academy and study medicinal alchemy is to learn how to combat this plague and how to save innocent lives from being taken by this illness. However, the truth behind this illness is a much, much darker and creepier thing that I'm not gonna get much into because I don't really want to spoil this book for you, because honestly, I really loved it. And yeah, I just want to say it's really dark and it's great. You should read it. Okay, and finally, my favorite book that I've read recently is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I really, really loved it. So I actually have read Maureen Johnson before, but I read her contemporary series, 13 Little Blue Envelopes, and I read that many, many years back. But I always associated her with a more contemporary style, and I was always really curious when I saw that she started coming out with the more thriller-like stories, and this was highly, highly reviewed recently, and so I decided to pick it up, and I'm really, really glad I did, because I really, really enjoyed this. So this is about a girl called Stevie, who also moves into a new school that has a very dark past. There have been, a series of mysterious murders that have happened in the history of the school. And Stevie is a budding detective, and she loves anything related to murder, mystery, crime. She loves reading about that stuff, and she has her own theories. Actually, one of the reasons why she really wanted to go to this school was to try and crack what actually happened in the past at this school. And you know how in a lot of these sort of crime stories, the villain has a name, right? And in this case, his name is Truly Devious. That's how he signs. It's one of these villains that leaves riddles and leaves notes signed by Truly Devious. And that's who supposedly committed these murders back in the history of the school. But then suddenly, Truly Devious comes back again in the present when Stevie goes to this school. Yeah, it's a thriller. It's a contemporary thriller. And I thought it was awesome. It also has anxiety rep, which is a bit surprising, but also awesome and appreciated. And they actually have a few tabs. I very rarely tab things, but I did tab, and I just want to see. Yeah, so one of the tabs is about a panic attack that Stevie has here, where it says, "And then it hit. Panic attacks are mean little freaks. First came the speed. Then came clamping in the throat, the lightness in her head, the feeling of blind acceleration into confusion. Then comes the strange wind that blew into her mind, knocking everything over and turning everything into a mockery of reality." It goes on like that, but the anxiety and the panic attacks are very well described, and in general, this book is really well written. That's another thing. I really enjoyed the writing in this. It's very, very good. Oh yeah, I also really loved this part. So there is this boy, and he was talking to Stevie's father or Stevie's family, and he had said something that Stevie used to say all the time, but her father, once the guy said it, listened, whereas he never used to listen to Stevie. And this is what Stevie says: "It was like she'd been punched in the gut. Stevie said stuff like that all the time and was told she was wrong. David said it once, and he got a nod and a compliment. Oh, the magic of dudes. If only they bottled it." I love that. That was I don't know. I really like that. I honestly cannot recommend this book enough. It is also a series. I'm not sure if it's going to be a trilogy, but I know there is at least a second book out. So yeah, I would highly recommend this if you like thrillers, if you like contemporary, if you like a bit of really good writing. I would really, really recommend this. There you go. That is the nice stack of books that I read recently, and of course the two that I read on Kindle. Let me know what you think, if you've read any of these or if any of them sound interesting to you and you would like to pick them up. Do let me know, and of course I will leave links to all of the books down in the description below if you're interested in picking any of them up. But anyway, that was it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time with a new video. Bye!